Okay, so right now we're going to go ahead and look at Rule 1 of adding integers. Remember, we're talking about adding integers. And again, we have some key vocabulary here, such as integers or absolute value. We'll talk about that when we get there. Our first question is, what kind of rule outcome will I get with a positive number plus a positive number? That is to say, a positive integer plus a positive integer. We've been doing these most of our life. For example, a positive 8 plus a positive 7 will give us a positive 15 as a result. When we have integers, it's very important to consider the sign. In this case, I see that I have the same sign. So when I have the same sign, I look for the sum of the two integers. The same sign is positive, therefore the same sign is positive. Positive 15. So with same sign sum, I'm noticing that I have two positive numbers, which gives me a positive integer as a result. Positive 8 plus positive 7 is positive 15. Same sign sum. That is for Rule 1. Likewise, we have a similar situation with Rule number 2. Let's take a look at Rule number 2. For Rule number 2, we have a negative number, or a negative integer, plus a negative integer. So, Rule 2 states that when we have a negative plus a negative, for example, let's say this time we have negative 8 plus negative 4, again, we have the same sign. We have a negative being added to a negative. So again, we have same sign sum. We will look for the sum, which is the answer you get when you add, of 8 and 4. The same sign, we have a negative 8 plus a negative 4, so my answer will be negative. It's the same sign. The sum of 8 and 4 is 12, so my answer is negative 12. If you think of this on a number line, and we are starting at 0, we have the negative direction and the positive direction. Negative 8 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This distance is negative 8 from 0, negative 8. I go in the negative direction for negative 8. Starting at 0, negative 8 is right there. If now I have a second event, negative 4, and I add that on, or it happens after the negative 8, I have negative 8 and then negative 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the negative direction. So from negative 8, it's negative 9, 10, 11, and 12. So this point here is negative 12. This interval was negative 4. So I started at 0, I went negative 8, and then negative 4. So the rule of thumb is for Rule 2, a negative plus a negative equals a negative when I am adding integers. Okay? So Rule 1 and Rule 2 employ same sign sum. When I have the same sign, positive or negative, I look for the sum of the two integers. Let's take a look at rule number 3. Rule number 3 and 4 are similar in that I have, for example, a positive integer being added with a negative integer. Now there is no hard and fast answer. A positive plus a negative can come out either positive or negative depending on the absolute value of each of those integers. Let's take a look when the positive number is larger. For example, if I have positive 9 plus, I add to it negative 3, what happens there? Well, looking at my number line again, starting at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the positive direction. From 0, I am at 9. But then a second event occurs, and that second event is I go into the negative direction 3 units. Remember, the negative direction is over here. So from 9, I go 1, 2, 3 units in the negative direction. So I was at positive 9, but then I went back 1, 2, 3. I am no longer at 9, I am at 6. I'm still in the positive area because I'm still to the right of 0. So what I find here is that I have different signs, and so I'm going to find the difference between the two numbers. Difference. The difference between 9 and 3 is 6. But 9 has a larger absolute value, which means it took me farther away from the 0. Because 9 had the larger absolute value, my answer will have a positive sign. So the answer in this case is positive 6. Again, the addition of integers that are different signs, a positive and a negative, you need to look at which number had the larger absolute value, because the effect is that it will push the number into either the positive or negative area even after you consider the second number, which in this case was subtracted from the 9. It still is in the positive area. So that's rule number 3, when I have a positive and a negative and the positive was larger. Now let's take a look at rule number 4, which is a slightly different situation, but similar in theory. I have a positive and I have a negative number, but in this case, what would have happened if my negative number was larger with the absolute value? For example, negative 7. What if I had the number 2 being added to a negative 7? A 2 plus a negative 7. Well, again, I need to look at the signs, and I can see that the signs are different. So they're different signs. I'm going to find the difference between 7 and 2. So the difference between 7 and 2, the difference being the answer when I subtract, is 5. The question is that going to be a positive 5 or a negative 5? And we can take a look at that on the number line in order to illustrate the point. The positive is to the right of 0, and the negative is to the left of 0. The negative direction, the positive direction. So I start off with 2. Actually, I'm starting over here with 2 positive. So let me go ahead and start at 0 and count up 2 spaces. 1, 2. And that takes me up to positive 2. 2 units away from 0. So I have 2 in the positive direction. But then I add negative 7. That is to say, then the second event is that I go in the negative direction 7 units. So what does that look like? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I was at 2. I go past 0 as I add 7 negative units. So from 2, it's 1, 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. So that 5, because the negative had a larger absolute value, is going to be negative 5. So my answer in this case, positive 2 plus negative 7 is negative 5. That is the addition of integers. Of course, one other thing to consider would be that any number, positive or negative, so for example, let's start with a positive. Positive 5 plus 0 is equal to positive 5. So any number plus 0 is that same number. Likewise, if I had negative 13 plus 0, I would still have negative 13. Don't forget the commutative property tells us I could have also had 0 plus 5 equals 5, or 0 plus negative 13 equals negative 13. Again, that's the commutative property, but here I have the 0 property of addition being exemplified. And that we'll just call the 0 property of addition. I hope you enjoyed another segment of Room 43, here to help you with the addition of integers. Thank you.